After 6 years in exile, Robert Mugabe's last foreign affairs minister, Walter Muzembe, is back. He is one of the so-called criminals who in 2017 were said to be surrounding former President Robert Mugabe. The military called them the G40 cabal. One by one, they fled Zimbabwe before and during the 2017 coup, fearing the wrath of the crocodile, the indignation of the crocodile, retribution from the crocodile. Some of them, like Ignatius Chombo and Kudzanayi Chipanga, were not so lucky as to escape. They were captured. Mzembe's case, however, is different. Because you see, though he was and is aligned to the G40, he was never its kingpin, as is sometimes incorrectly reported. He was also not arrested during the coup, though of course he would soon face charges of criminal abuse of office and theft of trust property. Mzembe left Zimbabwe in 2018 before clearing his name. He supposedly left in order to seek medical treatment. He would never return. The Mnangagwa regime tried to repatriate him without success. He would later say that returning to Zimbabwe was never an option because his life was in danger and that he didn't trust the Mnangagwa regime to give him a fair trial. And yet, 6 years later, he is back. He has since been arrested in connection with the 2018 charges and of course, absconding from court. But what does his return and his arrest mean in the context of the ZANU-PF factional fiasco, especially given that his arrest happened days after he met President Mnangagwa? Is there really anything for Mzembe to account for insofar as the 2018 charges are concerned? Did Kasukwere have something to answer for? Did Ignatius Chombo have something to answer for? Will Professor Jonathan Moyo have something to answer for when he returns? And how come members of the G40 are the only ones with something to answer for crimes committed under Robert Mugabe's administration? Well, fellow Sazaitas, slay queens and bingers, socialites, papalites, vasinamalites, warkujga rice, never sinama rights. Welcome to the special report. In November 2017, the Zimbabwean military staged a coup that removed President Robert Mugabe, justifying the intervention as a necessary action to address quote-unquote criminals surrounding the president who were causing social and economic suffering, basically destabilizing Zimbabwe. The coup was dubbed Operation Restore Legacy, and whose legacy? Robert Mugabe. The G40 was accused of exploiting Robert Mugabe's presidency for personal gain. Prominent G40 members like Kasukwere, Ignatius Chombo, and Walter Muzembe faced charges of corruption and abuse of office. All the economic troubles of Zimbabwe were at that particular time pinned on the G40. For a while, the whole ZANU-PF ecosystem forgot about sanctions. Out of political necessity, the G40 became the alpha and omega of Zimbabwean problems, the scapegoat of Zimbabwean problems. The military blamed the G40 as being solely responsible for the economic crisis. And so, desperate for change, the people welcomed the coup. They positioned the coup as a moral necessity. And for a while, people started believing that maybe an old dog can be taught new tricks after all. They were hoodwinked into believing that the Mnangagwa faction was innocent and that the G40 faction was solely responsible for the economic crisis. Yet, almost 10 years later, there is no single conviction. Xavier Kasukwere was charged in 2018 with criminal abuse of office over land allocations and using an undesignated exit point during his exile, was acquitted of all charges. Ignatius Chombo was arrested for fraud and corruption dating back to his tenure as local government minister, faced multiple charges, including a land deal case from 20 years before. But of course, Chombo was acquitted. Now these acquittals highlight a pattern. High-profile arrests are followed by legal failures, suggesting either weak evidence or selective prosecution to neutralize political rivals rather than deliver justice. I'll say that again. Neutralize political rivals rather than deliver justice. A symbolic gesture to maintain the illusion of justice. Actually, it's both an illusion of justice and an illusion of justice. So, does Muzembe have something to account for insofar as the 2018 corruption charges are concerned? Well, in the grand scheme of things, the question should not even arise at all. Because you see, when it comes to Zimbabwean politics, it's never really about whether someone is guilty or not. Because you can rot in prison with or without trial. You can rot in prison even when you are innocent beyond any reasonable doubt. Indeed, the law is a weapon used to silence critics and neutralize opponents. ZANU-PF has a whole history, an entire history, a documented history of using legal mechanisms to suppress dissent and silence critics. This strategy involves deploying charges often based on vague laws to intimidate, detain, or marginalize opponents. The case of Blessed Geza is a perfect example of this tactic. Geza faced no legal charge until he stood up against Emmerson Mnangagwa, I should say President Emmerson Mnangagwa. His subsequent expulsion from ZANU-PF and a barrage of criminal charges, including an alleged rape case from years ago, illustrates just how ZANU-PF weaponizes the law to neutralize dissent.
Angari MP kusanyasi achibva pa mwana ikoko mwana wechikoro nyaya inobva yangonzisa MP tinganyadziswa ichibva yangonzi ikoko. Saka toda kuchiita candidate muna 2018 president wakati aiwa uyane mhosva yake tikangomuita candidate opposition ikaenda kana kumakosi kana zvine nyaya which means anobviswa kana kuti disqualify positions iyo inoita mahara achibva disqualify kuti asamira sani MP. So ndinodakara ari kukombere nairoro kuti makanditadzisa kuita chii MP. Mari dziya dzekumadhaimondi nedzemombe dzemabhunu dziya dzaiuta mari yakadini yakapera semunhu anofarawo nemadzimai chaizvo.
So there you go. The man you were listening to is the chief organizer of ZANU-PF. His name is Munyaradzi Machacha. He goes by the title of political commissar. He is responsible for instilling right thinking within the party. He is the custodian of the party's ideology. They call him Teteve Msangano. He holds the position previously held by people like Xavier Kasukwere, Boda Gezi, Elliot Manyika, and many others. Anyway, for those who might not understand Shona, Machacha was pretty much saying Blessed Geza was disqualified from representing ZANU-PF in Sanyati in the 2018 harmonized elections because he had allegedly raped a minor. And according to Machacha, this disqualification is what led to Geza's beef with ED. As Machacha explains it, the party leadership, including ED, knew about this rape, but they decided to protect Geza from prosecution because of his title, status, and standing in the party. Now, of course, it's possible that Machacha is lying through his teeth. It's possible that all this was fabricated just to soil Geza's image. ZANU-PF is very good at that. But the very fact that Machacha has the boldness to publicly reveal that ZANU-PF can protect one of its own, even after defiling a minor, shows you the rottenness of not only ZANU-PF, but also Zimbabwe as a whole. Because In a functioning democracy, this issue would have become a hot topic for the simple reason that it involves a minor. But then again, our moral compass as a nation stopped working ages ago. We need a magnetic force of national reconciliation and national healing for our moral compass to start working again. Ethically, ignoring a non-rape to protect an MP is deplorable. And exploiting it now for political gain further highlights the hypocrisy of ZANU-PF. This case underscores the rottenness of Zimbabwe's political system, where justice is subordinated to power. In Zimbabwe, justice is a subordinate of power. Justice worships power. In fact, in Zimbabwe, power defines justice. You see, when power defines justice, it leads to arbitrary rule, selective prosecution, and eroded trust. Of course, zero social contract. Ideally, it should be the other way around. Justice should define power to ensure legitimate, fair, and moral governance, prioritizing impartiality and accountability over political expediency. If justice defined power in Zimbabwe, ZANU-PF would have investigated Geza's alleged rape impartially, without fear or favor, at the time when it was known, regardless of his MP status. Yes, fine, they disqualified him from running as an MP in 2018, but if that disqualification was about justice, then it would have been followed by legal action against Geza. And even the recent charges against him, though delayed or rather belated, would have been based on evidence, not political retaliation. A just system would have prioritized the rights of the minor over Geza's political utility, ensuring accountability over loyalty. The failure to act on Geza's alleged crime until he became a government critic underscores a system where power dictates justice, where power dominates justice, where power defines justice. Actually, in Zimbabwe, power is the husband of justice. Not a loving husband, no, an abusive husband. Which explains why justice cries every 5 years when Zimbabweans pretend to vote, as if they don't know the outcome before voting. It is crazy that the so-called criminals on whose depravity the 2017 coup was premised have not been held to account for their alleged depravity. Two of the so-called criminals, Chombo and Chipanga, have been roaming around the streets of Harare scot-free. In fact, Chipanga was actually readmitted into the system. He was given a position in the Makoni DCC. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So you can see that the arrest of Mzembe was yet another symbolic arrest meant to give you and me an illusion of justice, or actually illusion of justice. So you see, it is never about justice, even if the accused person is actually guilty of the alleged crime. It's all about power. It has always been about power. Those who control power are the ones who determine the measure of justice each and every one of us will receive. In some instances, they can actually decide not to deliver justice at all. Just like what happened to Dumiso Dabengwa and Lookout Masugu. You see, in 1983, Zimbabwe had its first treason trial, where Dumiso Dabengwa and Lookout Masugu were being accused of plotting a coup d'etat against Robert Mugabe. They were acquitted on the 28th of April 1983 by the Supreme Court. On that same day, in the same courtroom, as soon as they were declared not guilty, they were immediately arrested. They would spend the next 4 years in prison, even though the highest court of appeal in the land had declared them not guilty. 4 years of unimaginable torture, yet you are innocent. Sadly, Lookout Masugu didn't make it. He died on the 5th of April 1986. Dabenga was lucky. He survived and lived to tell the story. Unfortunately, Masugu didn't. He didn't live to enjoy the fruits of the independence he had helped bring about. It has never been about justice. It's not about whether you are guilty or not. You see, the law is an instrument used to teach you a lesson when they feel like you are misbehaving. It's never about justice. It's always about power. It has never been about justice. And if you're a politician or an activist and you make a deal, an arrangement with the regime to have your charges dropped, it means the system now owns you. It means you can no longer criticize or stand against the regime for as long as you live in Zimbabwe. It basically means you have sold your soul to the powers that be. It means you're no longer a threat to them. You now live at their mercy. That also explains why former ZANU-PF members are not bold enough to take on ZANU-PF and expose all the dirty stuff. It's because the CIO has files on each and every one of them. The day you rise against the regime is the day your file will be used against you. The system will descend on you with all sorts of charges. Some of them will be real charges. Some of them will be exaggerated. And some are fabricated. That explains why those who leave ZANU-PF almost always go back to ZANU-PF. Those who don't go back to ZANU-PF are the ones that leave politics for good. If you're a former ZANU-PF member and you want to permanently pursue politics outside ZANU-PF, then make sure there are no skeletons in your cupboard, because ZANU-PF will use those skeletons to mastermind your downfall. Have you noticed that Professor Jonathan Moyo has been a good boy for a while now? Is this in preparation for a possible comeback? Is he also, just like Muzembe, on his way back home? And is home Zimbabwe or ZANU-PF? Well, whatever happens, I'll be here to marinate you with all the details without fear or favor, because on this platform, we say it as it is. And as always, thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoy the content, please like and share.